Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Bello, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. Hi, guys.
Hey. Today on the pod, I thought we'd talk about something that has come up in conversation between us a couple times recently, and that is this idea of permission and sort of either being conditioned to or feeling like we have to ask permission either from other people or from ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. I'm happy to go there.
I didn't even come with a question.
No, you just reintroduced the topic.
Yeah, that's why I'm just introducing the topic. No, this came from a conversation that we were having on the beach the other day, and we were just talking about how as we're walking way of the heart and just going on life, living our life journey, what are some parts that could still be not finessed, but, you know, what might be missing or what could be worked on. And this idea of permission came up. And I think that when you're following your path and you're living in accordance with your essence or you're grounded in who you are, there can still be a part of you that feels as though you need to be seeking permission from other people to do that.
Yeah.
And that might come up professionally in needing professional validation, feeling like the job that you're doing is worthwhile. It also often comes up in relationships as well, either with people who you're really close to or people, you know, on the periphery of your social circle, feeling that need to sort of justify or validate what you're doing. And what that really is it's seeking permission for you to just be you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in this one we'll probably find that there's a whole range of levels. I mean, as I sort of reflected on the conversation we had, that was definitely my observation, is that this conversation has levels. It's kind of not it's not just others' permission, you know, grow up, or your permission, you know, internalize and you know, move beyond that. I think it's probably much more layered. I mean, there are situations in life where we need permission, right? But you know, if I want to go and drive my neighbour's car, I actually need permission.
Yeah, totally.
I can't just go open his front door, grab his keys, and go, "Oh, it's a nice car. Go and take it for a burn."
Bye.
You know, so there are. So we're not suggesting at any level that there's, you know, and at work, you know, to do certain initiatives with company resources or to take initiatives with other, you know, when you're taking initiatives with other people or you're engaging other people or you're going to impose something upon other people, then obviously it's respectful to get other people's permission in that regard. I think at the final level, what we're talking about is that I want to live from my center, from my essence, and I'm still kind of facing outwards and saying, you know, to key influences in my life or people that have impact upon me, you know, wow, do I need to get their permission to be who I really want to be?
Yeah.
Right. And it's a little bit nuanced, because you could say, no, you don't. You just be you, right? And we're all for that. I mean, that's way of the heart. You know, essence is as essence must be. You do you, but all that sort of stuff. Obviously, if we're going to impact them, then there's a conversation there, right?
Yeah.
And I've been I've been married to the same person for 39 years or 38 years. And so, yes, there's a conversation about how this is going to impact one another, right? I don't just make unilateral decisions that impact her and then just go, well, suck it up.
Yeah.
I don't need your permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just not loving and caring. but I think but then if we go down even a little bit more granular than that, is there a disposition in me that says no to me from the get-go because I feel like I don't have their permission to do that?
Totally.
And then that becomes a limiting factor in my life, right? Because obviously I feel like I need to go and get someone else's permission to actually have some kind of internal alignment.
Yeah. And I guess the way that we were talking about this originally, it was sort of as a posture piece. That
great.
That giving yourself permission or allowing, yourself to be who you are, that's a posture that you carry with yourself, not a reactive, well, I'm going to do whatever I want.
No, yeah.
But something that you carry with you. And I think that when you're doing that in alignment with your essence, that's not going to be something that inherently sort of steamrolls another person or violates another person.
Yeah, and if we're true about the conversation that we were having, just so everyone gets it, you and I were talking about our spiritual journeys, and when I asked you, because what do you think? Because we do this from time to time, we check in on one another and go, what you think that there's something in my kind of spiritual curriculum that I need to address? And you sort of said, yeah, sometimes, Bella, I think you haven't really addressed the permission issue in your own life. It's almost like you haven't given yourself permission on occasions. I observe sometimes a restraint or a holding back where you haven't given yourself permission. It's a really great conversation. It's a very accurate observation for someone who's probably one of the biggest pieces of my own kind of karmic curriculum, the stuff that is on my life plate that I've had to work through, is to move from like a highly controlled and or regimented space, which began when I was born into that. I'm not an army brat or something like that, but I had Victorian parents, right? So there was very defined roles. The space was very regulated, and I went to a very highly discipline orientated educational context, and so. I learned permission in my world was a skill set that you learned because it protected you from stepping out of line and then incurring the disapproval or the punishment from stepping out of line, right? So, I think we've talked about that schema before. It's like, believe, behave, belong, and sometimes it's just behave, and believe me if you don't. And so the structure can kind of get a little bit regulated. So permission giving as a kind of an inner practice, or as a socializing practice, something that you did. It was just smart to do that, because it protected you from crossing a boundary you didn't want to cross, or staying within. So staying comfortably in a social context without kind of incurring consequences for stepping outside of that. Now that's probably where all permission giving starts.
Totally. In socialization, right?
Yeah, which is not an enemy, right? It's just what you do when you are regulating yourself in social spaces. It only becomes an enemy when that instinct, as it has in my life, when that instinct keeps going. Then you go into a workplace context and you're always seeking. I wouldn't even say I wouldn't say that the seeking of permission is the same as seeking of approval, right? They're two separate things.
Yeah.
Permission is just checking in to see if the temperature's still comfortable enough for you to move forward. So it's this constant checking in. It's this constant, I love it when you see animals do it, nose in the air, sniffing, is everything good here? Is that a threat? It's like, and then going, okay, everything's fine, move forward, right? That's the external version. For me, that's the external version of that. And I think that's what you were observing. And then that obviously, if it goes long into your adulthood, and it becomes an unhealthy dynamic, then you get into that place where people will say, you actually don't need other people's approval.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because if you're an adult who is seeking permission all of the time, that's exhausting.
It is
and
exhausting.
then I think that you start to develop really maladaptive behaviors as a result of that. And I think that can either manifest as being really reactive.
Yeah.
Like you get to a point where you go, I don't want to ask permission anymore. I'm going to do whatever I want and I'm going to blow it up.
Yeah.
Or you become quite saccharine and you become quite needy and graspy and like a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And all of that is seeking that permission.
It's a form of seeking.
That permission, right?
Yeah. So I think that that's exactly right. And, you know, the version of that in my life is that, you know, I comply or behave. And then, you know, then puppy gets off the leash and no one's putting this puppy back on the leash. You know, I'm heading for the mud puddle, you know, and like, you know, and clearly that, you know, I definitely see that pattern in my life,
totally.
You know, and the trouble with that is, you know, puppy does get back on the leash and then someone says, well, you're a bad dog.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's not you're a bad dog. It's just what you might have done. You might have been a bad dog.
Maybe.
You know, whatever that means. But, you know, the dog gets back on the leash and then he gets punished for going for a run. And I would say this, going for a run is sometimes the healthiest thing you've actually done.
Yeah.
You know, I call that in the first book I wrote, I call that the best of you behaving badly.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Well, it's like, I've only ever done one trip to America. And when I was in America, I was asked to spend some time with this guy and he was a musician, right? And he's never going to listen to this podcast, so it's all good. And this was a better part of 20 years ago. He was a musician and he was like classically gifted, deconstructed muso. Wake up late, you know, stay up late, have a very kind of alternate existence, very spontaneous, very creative, very loose around the edges in terms of stuff that, you know, like paying the bills or like just turning up as a responsible adult.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A little bit lost in his creativity. And yet he had married this girl that could run a corporation.
Right.
She was a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was impressive. She was on point, fastidious. Whatever he lacked, she would have had 10 times the quotient, the horsepower to compensate for that. She would get off and go off to a high-powered job every day. And he's been up late writing music or doing whatever. Sometimes creating brilliance and sometimes just staying up late and doing nothing, you know. And he would wake up and there would be this list there for him.
Okay.
You know?
Amazing.
Do this.
What every creative loves is to-do list.
Do this list of, you know, 7 or 8 things, which his level of engagement in those 7 or 8 things is
about
zero.
Yeah.
You know, and he would do them to a greater or lesser level of skill, and she would effectively come home after work and she would pretty much pick up the list and give him a scorecard on how well he'd done, right?
Okay.
And we're talking about very, you know, isn't this a marriage built to last? You know, and you know, and her opinion of, you know, how well, you know, her score meant something to him, right? He didn't want to disappoint his wife, right? And she didn't really want to have a child that she had to bloody write lists for. Right?
Yeah.
You know, so there's some big relational issues here. And anyway, this just kept on going on and on and on and on and on until in the end the pattern was it didn't matter how much he tried to be the kind of guy that would garner her you know, approval and or, you know, I don't know, pride, whatever it is. I don't know what he was looking for. You know, affirmation. It didn't really matter what he did. It was just because she operated at such a high level, he was just never going to get there, you know. And so it really became a major negative dynamic in their relationship, both his capacity to, what some people might say, step up, and her capacity to just go, hey, come on the farm. Like, some of the stuff on your list isn't that important. Yeah. You know? And so the power imbalance in the relationship was massive. Mm-hmm. He's the stuff up. She's the clever, achieving one. She's holding it all together. It was the massive imbalance in that relationship. And so one day he just went out, got completely wired. And she came home and he's up on the roof of the house.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Running around, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, she has this, like, number one, she's terrified.
Yeah.
Right. And number two, she's all sorts of things. She's angry. She's terrified. She feels violated. She feels like, you know, I never signed on for this shit.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, she's looking at the person in her life that she deeply, deeply loves, running around on the roof in various states of undress, wired to the gills, potentially about to fall off.
Yeah.
And catastrophically end their relationship, right? And so it just was enormously dangerous situation. And then anyway, so I get called in the day after this happens.
Okay.
You know, to what have you got to offer?
Go and mediate the situation.
Can you help here, Greg? Maybe.
A bit far gone, but sure.
And I sit down with him and he's just full of guilt.
Yeah.
I stuffed up. I'm a dickhead. She doesn't deserve someone like me. I just can't go to the next level. I can't be the guy that she wants me to be. I just had a revelation in that moment. I had a dawning in. I said, dude, you did go to another level. He goes, well, what are you talking about? I go, your wife has always been just telling you, can you just go to another level? Can you just take it up a level? Can you just like step up in life? Mm-hmm. I said, and you know you know that she's quite regimented and quite disciplined and quite in her box. I said, I just promise you what you did yesterday just destroyed the box. I said, you took her box of containment and control and order and you blew it up.
Yeah.
I said, so you really did go to another level.
Yeah.
It's just you did it in the most profoundly unresourceful way you could possibly do.
Okay.
I said, if you could channel that desire to break out and to go to another level in your life, and I hate that language of go to another level, but if you could step out of that, you know, like, this is me, I can't turn up, and you could actually turn up more resourcefully, if you could just engage life with that kind of energy and that kind of passion. I said, because what you effectively did in that dynamic is you gave yourself permission to do something that you wanted to do. It's just that what you wanted to do was hugely dangerous and ridiculous and irresponsible, right? So in that way, yes, you failed and you can beat yourself up as long as you need to about that. But in reality, at another level, you finally gave yourself permission to be something other than the list of stuff that you had to do on any given day.
Yes. I
said, we just need to channel that energy about you giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
For you to give yourself permission to not just comply with her, but to be the kind of people that warrants her respect, that warrants her regard. Because really the biggest issue here is not winning over her regard, but you for yourself being that guy. Mm-hmm. You for yourself stepping into that. I said, you know, in a way, that was the best of you, the part that gives yourself permission. Mm-hmm. It's the best of you behaving incredibly badly.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We just need the best of you to give yourself behavior, give yourself permission to act incredibly positively and powerfully. Now, that all sounds very esoteric, I suppose, or very out there. But like a couple of months later, they gave birth to a child that was handicapped. Are we allowed to say that word? Physically, mentally impaired.
Differently abled.
Okay, yes, not handicapped. Forgive my 1980s educator language. So yeah, and turns out that she really struggled with that.
Yeah.
And he was a genius.
Right.
So
that broke the box, right?
It was, yes, drugs broke the box.
Yeah.
But also having someone who took him to a relatively extreme level of needing to show up in a completely different way, he could really do that.
Yeah, okay.
And they ended up being the most wonderful parents together, because she brought the stability and the ballast to the yacht, and he set the sails.
Totally.
And it was brilliant. But it was really pivoting around this, that where that shift initiated in him is the best of him behaving badly.
I wonder, like, off the back of this, and I know that this isn't really sort of set in stone, so we really are riffing, but I mean, I'll just talk from my perspective. I can really empathize with that feeling of pacing the cage, for lack of a better term, where you're like, I feel trapped. I want to break out. I want to just like behave badly.
Yeah.
How do you then, in that moment, channel that towards something resourceful? Because once you're getting to that point and you're feeling that pent up and you're feeling like, there's no other way for me to get out of this than to just really shake things up.
Well, I think that's where the falseness is, right? He clearly didn't have to go and do that. And doing that, to put it in context, doing that was a really abusive, really neglectful, really selfish thing to do to a wife that was really turning up.
Yeah.
And his disobedience and his dangerous behavior was not some kind of seesaw balance to her responsible, intelligent, get shit done kind of behavior, right? So there was no connection there between, well, her controlling behavior warranted that. That's just wrong, right? The action was wrong. The stimulus that takes the person to there because they want to get out of that, right? Let's affirm that. So going back to our original analogy, nothing wrong with puppies running around the park. You know what I mean? But that's a good thing. And sometimes when we do give ourselves permission, it can feel like, if you're the person like me that didn't give themselves permission, or that, constantly sought the approval of other people and didn't get it because their environment was restrictive, then you might break out like a dog off a leash, or like our friend, the best of him behaving badly. And then what we do, my point was, what we do is we discipline the behavior as if, this just affirms why you need to be on a lead in the first place, right? Yeah. It's like, no. It's like you can regulate with other people, give yourself permission, and not fall into abhorrent, reactive, out of control behavior. So so for me, it's the three things. It's like, I don't always need to be seeking the approval of someone else. I don't always need to even be finding my own approval. I actually fundamentally need to come back to a place where I trust myself to behave in a way which is congruent with everything that I am, which I think is the third position. Because so often this conversation might fall into, you don't need other people's approval, you need your own approval. But then someone who's constantly going, can I do this? Can I do this? And they're self-examining and turning inward. That can be just as exhausting as just, can I do this? Can I say that? Just, can I have this? And then you have and some people have that. Some people don't ask other people's approval, but you look at them, they go, oh, should I have another one? Should I have another? Am I, and it's like it could be around a dietary thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no freedom there. They're as much on the chain as someone who's constantly taking the temperature out here. They're just always taking the temperature in here. So for me, the permission piece is actually it's not in the reactivity. It's not in the constantly seeking someone else's approval. It's not even in constantly seeking my own approval.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just living in a semi-flow state where I'm grounded in myself and I just act with a degree of freedom and naturalness, and I act with a personal liberty that doesn't come from I gave myself permission to be me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I just am me, and part of being me is I don't really spend a whole lot of time having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, we go back to my cats. We used the cat analogy the other day. Lily is like a frog hunter, right?
Yeah.
And we should really restrict her because we live in a very wooded area. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of frogs around, but Lily is like apex amphibian hunter. That's our cat, or one of our cats. And I don't think she ever feels guilty. You must say, yes, because she's a cat, Greg. She just kills things. But it's like there is this point that when you are naturally just being you, you're not stopping to really have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're just doing you.
Mm.
Yeah, that raises other issues, which I can hear you about already.
Yes, I think a lot of like, what about this popped up, but I think I want to follow the train of thought and shock horror, I'm going to follow your train of thought instead.
Logic, yeah.
I think when you do that, and when you allow yourself to live in that flow state, and when you're giving yourself permission from an authentic point of view, not from a continually navel gazing or continually looking for other people, I think that you're able to hold things a lot more loosely. Yeah. Or at least I feel like I'm able to, if I'm really genuinely living in alignment,
grounded,
and living, and grounded, everything is, I have this sense that everything is kind of provisional. I'm able to hold it really loosely.
Yeah. So I think, so if we tease that out, right? So let's just say, and this is a very much way of the heart thing, right? That there is a state that we get to where we're not seeking others' approval. We're not constantly checking in with ourselves for self-approval. So we've stopped doing the social scanning. We've even stopped doing the introverted scanning. And we're just in a place where we're attuned, we're aligned, we're grounded. And we would say, you're walking in the way, the Tao of your own life. And that Tao or way of your own life is very, very natural. It's very, very free, and it's quite spontaneous, and it's quite flexible and adaptable and agile, and it's not necessarily it's not really fixated on regulation, being regulated, right? Because it trusts itself naturally not to get unregulated, right? And it trusts itself not to put itself in situations where it's going to be over-regulated.
Yeah.
Right?
This leads me to, though, you can give yourself permission, you can be in that flow state, but then you do find yourself in situations that are over-regulated. You do find yourself where someone's writing you a list, and, what do you do then? Yeah.
Well, I think the question then becomes, when you then go into, more stricter, more confined, more prescriptive spaces, going in there naturally without the need to necessarily burn the house down, which is the behave badly, or comply completely, or react at all. Sometimes you just go into those places and you might just go, there's not going to be much here for me, and I just do what I do and I get out of here. Sometimes you might go into a social situation and you go, there's not a lot. And so a mate of mine would say, you just make yourself a small target. Don't make yourself a big target. Reacting is to make yourself a big target.
Yeah, can we, for people who haven't heard this before, can we talk about what a small target and a big target is?
I think we're adding a lot to the conversation, but
Yeah.
I think that the idea between small, medium, and large target is when it's safe and you can engage and you can do what you want to do, then then you can be vulnerable, you can be a big target, you trust the people around you, and it's no problem, right? When you go into another environment, which might be more restrictive, more limited, more not hostile, but just less, less friendly or less generous, make yourself a small target. So it's like, so you don't draw a whole lot of energy your way. You know what I mean? So I think between a place where you can engage a lot and exercise a whole lot of energy, all the way down to a place where you can't, and so you just go, okay, I can't, right? So I think if you're naturally in that place where you're not fixated on external permission, you're not fixated on, asking yourself the question, can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? Should I be here? Should I have another biscuit? Should I have another drink? Am I allowed to do X, Y, and Z? You're not in that kind of introverted space. You're just entering into that place quite naturally and trusting yourself in that space. It's a really healthy. That's a really healthy state. Now, the big arguments that I was getting to before is that people will say, well, you can't really trust people. I mean, this is a topic for another podcast, right? But there would be any number of people that would say social cohesion requires regulation. We just can't trust people to drive sensibly on the roads. That's why we have laws, right? So if we just said to everyone, there's no laws anymore, we just trust you to regulate yourself, people don't regulate. Does that make? So some people would say for social cohesion and interaction, we need to regulate. We need policies. We need legal structures. We need punishment for offences, right?
Yeah.
Because people are inherently untrustworthy.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that perspective, that a part of permission was the need for restriction. But don't you think if you're like living in accordance with your essence or with your ground of being, that that's not going to create in you the desire to drive 200 kilometers down the highway? Like, I think if you really were acting from your heart wouldn't be like, again, let's go race. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, completely. It's completely way of the heart's position. Way of the heart's position is that people aren't inherently bad and need to be regulated. People are inherently beautiful and amazing, and that the essence and the heart of people is a beautiful, complete, wonderful phenomena that turns up. Not turning up to want to violate people. When you step out of that and you step into ego, or you step into emotional dysregulation, or you step into, some kind of mental discombobulation. Yeah, when one of those other energies is completely dominating your heart, then bad stuff happens. People say, like, people's pushback often on way of the heart is, oh, well, way of the heart's unrealistic because people are inherently bad. No, they're not. But they can become and do bad and or evil things. The further you get away from the ground of your own being, your own centeredness, your own natural flow or Tao or way, then the more you get dysregulated and the more potential there is for bad stuff to happen.
Yeah,
that's our position,
and that's a pod in and of itself. I reckon too. Yeah.
So that moves us to, so in the context of the permission giving conversation, we're sort of scanning two things. Do I need other people's permission? Sometimes in concrete things, when you're impacting other people, most of the time, hopefully, you will have internalized that voice. You won't be scanning your environment in some sort of hypervigilance to go, oh, who do I need to get sign off on me being me? And then that application gets flicked over into yourself. Hopefully I don't need to spend my whole life completely self-examining. So I'm this completely inwardly regulated person that never steps out of line. Hopefully I've moved to a middle place where I'm sensitive to others, I'm aware of what I feel, and I'm just operating quite freely in the middle, and I'm avoiding moments where I need to either be overly regulated by myself or overly regulated by other people so that I avoid, puppy off the leash behaving poorly. But even if I do something which is suboptimal, I look at the reason why I did the suboptimal thing. I don't necessarily punish the behavior, because there'd be a whole lot of other stuff that drives that behavior. Come back to center again, and realize that a natural center, ground of being, connection to heart, connection to essence, all the stuff that we teach in our courses, that is actually a really, really valuable place to live your life out, whether you're going into highly restrictive environments and highly structured environments.
Yeah.
Or the other danger is whether you're going into environments where there are no rules. I mean, there's always two extremes in that regard. Highly structured environments where you go, God, it's restrictive here.
Yeah.
Or highly unconstructed environments where you go, wow, there doesn't seem to be any boundaries here, right? So the bounded set and the non-bounded set, sitting in your own essence is always going to be what we come back to.
Yeah, and I think that sitting in your own essence has inherently a blueprint for how to be in those situations that are either over-regulated or under-regulated.
Yeah.
I think that your essence is kind of, we've talked about this as being this energy that you can't really put words to, but I think that if you're genuinely tapped in, it does guide you in a plethora of different situations. And
there's a way.
Yeah. And in that way, permission isn't needed at all. So asking for permission or seeking permission kind of becomes this completely redundant.
Well, yes, yeah, and if not completely redundant, it just becomes a movement to appropriateness and politeness and consideration, as opposed to a license. Because really, at the heart of this, and we talked about this when we get to burnout. When we talked about burnout, we said that people get to burnout because they lose sovereignty over their own energy. It's the same thing here. If you're constantly outsourcing permission to either others or even to your own internal narratives, what you're losing is sovereignty. You're losing the ability to just function as a natural, free person.
Yeah.
And that's not a healthy way to live. That's not what we're about. And so going back to you challenging me on that was a good challenge, because it makes me go, okay, let's we say way of the heart is a pathway to personal freedom. Let's just pursue the freedom, right? That's always the challenge. Is way of the heart is just wanting you to experience life with greater levels of personal freedom, and part of that is just engaging in some of these ideas and saying, yeah. Am I dependent on others giving me permission? Even dependent on myself giving myself permission, or can I trust others and trust myself and stay grounded in who I am and live way of the heart? It almost sounded like a commercial. You could cut that.
Yeah, that's it. Let's use that on our
Instagram
socials.
post. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You're saying this on our socials. We did a good job marketing.
I have a feeling that some people might get a little bit confused about the best of you behaving badly. My point in that, just to reiterate that, is not to affirm bad behavior. My point in that is when the dog goes absolutely crazy at the park and just carries on like a pork chop, right? Like goes to the dog park and steals every other dog's ball and jumps up on people and is crazy. You go, no, don't, you automatically want to put the dog back on the leash. But there is a part in that unresourceful behavior. A friend of mine would call it unresourceful behavior. The unresourceful behavior might have a resourceful root, even if you don't judge the root, you judge the fruit. You jumped up on everyone. Yeah. That was not optimal.
Yeah.
The fact that you gave yourself permission to go for a run, that is good,
Yeah. I think I want to try and solidify that with another example. Maybe one that's not as extreme as like getting loaded to the gills and dancing on the roof. Do you know what I mean?
That was where I just came up with that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if that is something that we want to bring clarity to, it's good to land that in how that might look or feel in an everyday scenario.
Well, it's just seeing in your life where, I mean, for me, sometimes it's like when I was writing all the content for Way of the Heart, I've written 2 books and I don't know, all the content is an enormous body of work now. And it was the better part of 7 years of turning up to a desk and writing every day. Most days. And there was sometimes where I'd just be sitting there and I would have ground myself to a complete halt, and every part of me just wanted to go, I just want to go and, I don't know, do whatever, you know what I mean? I just want to waste a whole day. I want to go for a surf. I want to eat, I want to go and have a big feed. I want to go down to the shops to where they make that chocolate thick shake and I want to buy 3. Now, you know what I mean? Now, I should clarify, I never bought 3, but I did buy 1 on occasions. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, dude, then go and have a thick shake.
What is we're saying that like maybe the behavior is bad, but the root is good. What is it? What is the root in that situation?
Because at that point, the root had been that writing had become a drudgery.
Okay.
That thinking had become a trap, had become a prison. That I was never going to bring anything creative to that moment. That I had become so tied up. So the instinct to go, I need to break out of this jail of my own creation. I need to break out of this drudgery. I need to bring some color into my life. Right? And you can then go and judge the way that you bring color into my life. If I go, well, I'm just now going to have 7 Asahis on the deck and half a scotch. And while you're down the shop end, Ange, give me some smokes because it's game on. It's like, dude, we're not drinking beers, scotch, and doing durries on. Like, it's not happening. Like that would be a really unresourceful.
Fun, but unresourceful.
Well, probably not even fun. Just at my age, completely stupid. Do you know what I mean? And even now at my age, chocolate thick shake, yeah, like once a year.
Yeah.
Like not every time you get bored at writing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you see, so the example is this becomes the instinct to break out is good. It's necessary.
Yeah.
The way that you do that then becomes a conversation about, appropriate, inappropriate.
Yeah.
Beneficial, not beneficial.
Yeah, I think I can relate with this personally as well. Like, because I've felt,
Trapped.
100% trapped.
Yeah.
And I've always found that exercise or dance or some type of way that I was expressing my essence in a way that was, I don't know, useful but freeing was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think that in those situations, if you are feeling trapped, I feel like that's an opportunity to sit down and go, okay, where in my life brings me that sense of freedom, brings me a sense of expression.
Yeah, I think Bloss is a great example of this. She's an incredibly, she's in healthcare. She's incredibly gifted at what she does in the medical space. She's highly regarded, and the fact is, sometimes that whole world, with the pressures that it brings, the routine, the shifts, the late nights, sometimes that just becomes overwhelmingly restrictive and tiring and ground you down, And one of the most effective things she can do is, she doesn't need permission for someone in that world to try and make it easy for her. She doesn't need to go into that place and go, please, can you look after me? Because largely in that public health system, they're not going to look after you, or even she's in the private health system, they're not going to look after you, So one of the things she does is she goes, oh, well, I'm going to go and have an adventure. And she and her mum and her sisters, and they might go to a yoga retreat, or they might go here, they might go there, they might do a bunch of different things. But it's her way, not her way of giving herself permission to have an alternate life, but it's her way of saying, I'm going to recalibrate back into my own center. And adventure really gets me there quickly. So they go and have an adventure, you know. Doesn't work as well for me. I mean, I like a holiday as much as the next person, but like I prefer a book.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer to be left alone. You know, like or some other highly introverted kind of antisocial piece. But yeah, that's what we're trying to explain in that piece, not to justify poor behaviour, but over-regulate seeking others' permission, you could get to that reactive place.
Totally.
Over-regulate seeking your own permission, you could just get fed up and get to that place as well. You know, find the centre. I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. It was I did say at the front end, I think that there was going to be a bunch of kind of nuanced layers to this, but hopefully our passion for you would be that you find the ways, and we're more than happy to help you find the ways to find your own centre, find your own heart space, find your own essence, and in a way move beyond the need for others' permission, your permission, get into that generative kind of your way, your own heart way. Absolutely. And live out of that.
Totally. And if you do have any questions or any feedback, you want to hear more, or if something in the podcast is still giving you a question mark, please reach out, let us know. We love getting comments and messages from you guys, and we're at a nice stage in our journey where we can reply to them and
as long as you're nice. If you're not nice,
if you're nice, please be nice.
Yeah. If you're not nice, we don't want to know about it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk to you. No, we do. But yeah, please reach out, and thanks for joining us.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.